The 49ers might be facing another vulnerable defense in the Carolina Panthers, who might be out a few key defenders. And while the 49ers defense may still be missing bodies, this could be another week where Brock Purdy and the offense could carry the load. We'll discuss some of the injuries and all the key matchups for Monday Night Football on today's 49K Pod.
You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Friday, November 21st, which means we're back with another preview show. Joined as always on Friday is KP. We don't have Desi today, but we're going to keep it rocking and rolling here, getting ready for this Monday Night Football game. KP, how you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, if Desi's not here, it's probably a good sign, right?
It might be. It just might be.
That we don't have to talk about 12 different injuries. So, no issues my way.
Almost feels like it's just that all the injuries that they've all been had. Like, everyone has gotten hurt already. But we will go through some injuries. It's really not for lack of injuries, though. It's more so because the injuries that we do know of, the new ones, Tatum Bethune and Eddie Pinheiro, we know those guys aren't going to be available. As Kyle Shanahan said, they're pretty much week to week for both of those guys. So, yeah, I mean, nothing new there on that front. Aside from that, like Robert Beal with a concussion as of yesterday's practice, did not participate. We'll probably get the Friday report at some point today. So that's the weird thing about games on Mondays. We don't have the game status report until really Saturday. And so we haven't even gotten the Friday practice report yet. So we're going off of Thursdays as of right now. But we do have a pretty good idea, like I said, of who is probably going to be on the outside of this. Like I said, Bethune, Eddie P., and, you know, aside from all the other players that are listed, I'd expect that they get to go. So Luke Gifford was a limited participant, but I expect he'll probably be good for Monday night. And then Robert Beal's a toss-up. It really depends on how he progresses through the protocol this week. Curtis Robinson is a full participant, so that's good news, seeing as how Bethune is out. But KP, like, I think what I really want to focus on is some of these injuries from the Panther side. And it does suck that we don't have at this moment, you know, the certainty of knowing who exactly is going to be out. But there's some guys that are trending in the not so great, you know, direction. And it's two other linebackers, Christian Roseboom and Trevin Wallace. And I feel like they didn't practice Thursday. So those could be very interesting to track the next couple of days here. If those guys aren't available, I mean, that's a huge advantage for the 49ers and one that we're definitely going to be talking about on the show.
Yeah, and real quick, excuse me, about the 49ers injury report. They actually did just send that out like 10 minutes ago, and no change. The only change was, just as it always is, like this would be a typical Thursday. So McCaffrey and Williams both were upgraded from did not participating, but that was just a rest day. But yeah, no, that's a good point, because if Rosenboom and Wallace, those are the two leading snap getters by a good margin too. Like those are essentially the only guys who play linebacker for Carolina this season. So if both of them are out, and we're talking about an offense that loves to live over the middle of the field, right? Like Kyle Shanahan's pretty much transcended the game where they play in between the numbers and they shrink the field. So not having your starting linebackers with George Kittle, with Christian McCaffrey, that's going to be very, very difficult to stop.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that more here in a bit when we get to the favorables. But let's talk about first the Panthers offense. So, you know, you got Bryce Young quarterback, Rico Dowdle, who's having a nice resurgence. I don't know if you could even call it a resurgence. He was pretty good with Dallas last year as well. But I would say maybe even doing better with the Panthers. Rico Dowdle, they got couple good wide receivers here. Ted McMillan, the rookie's he had a breakout game, you know, last week against the Falcons. Then you got Jalen Coker, second year wide receiver, Xavier Legette. So they got some talent in the wide receiver room there. Tight end Tommy Tremble, and their offensive line. So looking at this Panthers offense, I mean, looking at last week, they looked pretty great, right? But this hasn't been an offense that has really put it all together and been consistent all season. So, like, kind of what are the things that you see out of this team? To me, it looks like a team that wants to run the football first and foremost.
Yeah, to me, it seems like their coach is going out of their way to kind of protect Bryce Young, which you're going to do with a young quarterback, but they do run a lot. They don't run it well, but they do run it a lot, so the volume's there. So I think it looks like Dowdle's having a good year. It looks like there's some resurgence, but I think it's more of just the matter that he gets like he gets numbers, he gets attempts. But when I watch them, I think the rookie really stands out. But I like the idea of, big wide receivers, and that's what they're going to build around. So there's a plan there. But in that Falcons game, like I think they had 6 points at halftime or something. Like they were down big at halftime, and then Penix gets hurt. Kirk Cousins comes in. Obviously, we all know at this stage, Kirk Cousins isn't who he once was. So they have more opportunities because the Falcons aren't anything offensively. So I think that was more of Atlanta being Atlanta as opposed to Carolina just showing out offensively. I know Young had a bunch of yards, threw for a bunch of yards, but hardly any of those were really challenged. Tet is a monster, though. There's no doubt about it. 49ers are going to have their hands full with him. But I think there are some opportunities for the 49ers to get home. Last week we talked about, turnovers and sacks. This might be an even better opportunity for them to get home. Specifically, much like the Saints, I think this is an Upton-style game where he can generate some pressure, because last week against the Falcons, they got home 3 or 4 times just on nickel blitzes. So I would imagine Saleh plays copycat and does the same.
Yeah, and I saw something that said that, Dowdle's not so great. Okay, here's the stat. I don't have it on the slides, but he's allowed 12 pressures on 38 pass blocks. That's the second most pressures allowed by any running back. So if Rico Dowdle is out there and it's like a third down, expect Saleh to dial up the blitz. I think that's a good call out. And you were on the money, for that Saints game when it came to that and Kamara. So I think, yeah, you're right. They'll probably try that again. But let's talk about Rico Dowdle here and things that he does well. I mean, we know that the run game is a huge part of the Panthers' identity. And so as far as production, he's getting that. He's 4th in rushing yards with 833 rushing yards. I want to say he missed some games this season, didn't he? Because I know there were some games where Chuba Hubbard started. Yep. So, I mean, that's pretty impressive given that he missed some games. He's 5th in rushing yards over expected, 7th in yards per carry. He's averaging 5 yards per carry. He has 5 touchdowns on the season. And most importantly, he has a lot of success from the 11 personnel, 546 rush yards from that personnel grouping, 2nd most in the NFL, 6.3 yards per carry. That's 3rd most among running backs in that grouping. And he's logged 15 of his 20 explosive runs from 11 personnel. How do you feel like the 49ers match up against 11 personnel in general?
So statistically, that's their best unit, is when the 49ers are in nickel. It's crazy because when you say that, people automatically go to, well, Upton style gets burned all the time. But honestly, they for much of the season, they've been like a top 11-ish defense when they're in nickel, which is kind of wild to say because, again, like you're not thinking in those terms. But I think they match up well because of a lot of things that Upton style does. And
that's a strong suit.
Yeah, no, playing the run. He's very, very good at playing the run. I would go as far to say he's one of the 49ers' best run defenders. So it actually matches up really. It kind of plays into their hands because whenever the 49ers just get slower in general, they add another linebacker, things just don't tend to go very well. But their nickel defense has been pretty good this year. I can't bring it up right now, but for the longest, they were just hovering around that top 10 area in success rate. And when they were in nickel, but for whatever reason, well, not for whatever reason, but honestly, any other personnel is when they really struggle when that number goes down. So, yeah, I think it matches up well for them.
So I do have a stat that supports this. The 49ers have allowed 4.3 yards per carry, including just 2.8 yards after contact per carry. That's 4th fewest to running backs out of 11 personnel. And they're one of 3 teams that hasn't allowed a single touchdown in those situations. So, I mean, yeah, that says a lot. You're right. I mean, it is – the reason that I have Dowdle as a cautious is because I think they want to spam Dowdle, and if you're not careful, it could maybe get out of hand. And we know as of late, like since week 6, 49ers have struggled a little bit more, from this standpoint, allowing 4.2 yards per carry on inside design runs in that span. I mean, obviously the loss of Fred Warner has a lot to do with that. But here's another good thing. So this one's kind of funny because like I listed as a cautious, but there are some favorables in here as well. Over the last 2 weeks, Dowdle has rushed 20 times for 60 yards on first downs for 3 yards per carry, 15% success rate. So
that sounds more like it, honestly.
It's not working for them because now it's gotten to a point where they're spamming him so much it's just predictable. And actually, when you do go back and look at that Falcons game, with yes, they were down 21-6 at the half, but once they started passing a little bit more and they were passing more on first down, that's when they started having some success moving the football a little bit more. So seeing as how the 49ers are struggling in the passing game, one thing that I would be a little nervous of is that they see that, obviously they see it on the tape and they say, hey, let's actually maybe try to go away from running on first down as much as we have been and try to attack the 49ers weakness, which has been their secondary. I mean, do you feel like that's a possibility in this game too, that maybe they go against their tendency and go with what worked against the Falcons in the second half?
I don't. It's tough to say just because based on what I've seen from them, based on what I've watched, like a lot of like they only throw the ball, like they ditch the run because they get down early, right? Like they were down double digits. They've been down double digits in most of these games. And I actually just found the stats. So on the season after last week, they fell to 14th in success rate when they're nickel. But when they have like a 7-man box out of nickel, they are actually 3rd in the NFL in success rate, which is wild to think. But again, like you don't get that many opportunities. And like last week when the 49ers are on the field, when their defense was on the field, whenever it felt like it was always a 2-possession game. So the yardage they were giving up was almost empty. So it does reflect poorly on the stats. And that's what I would imagine a lot of this week's going to be like as well. I don't know. I'm interested to see what plan Saleh has, because I do think Tet has a lot of advantages. Like no matter who he's going against, that's not the type of wide receiver, in my opinion anyway, that Ronaldo Green can cover. Yeah. And just from like a physical standpoint, right? Him against Deommodore Lenoir, who's the same size as me, good luck there. So they also move him around quite a bit, and he does play in the slot quite a bit as well. So whether he's the number 2 or number 3 wide receiver, he can go against an even smaller player in up and stout. So it would be tough to slow down Tet. But I think this is an opportunity where you just go down swinging like, hey, if Jalen Coker gets over on me, if Xavier Legette gets over on me, so be it. So I think that's what the direction Saleh should go after. I would not be surprised, though, to see Carolina try to scheme open or scheme up against the 49ers safeties, because in my opinion, when I watch this defense, as frustrating as it probably is, knowing that there isn't a pass rush, I still think the safeties are just they've really let this team down this year, and that's with Malik back even. So it doesn't feel like he's added much at all.
Man, I can't imagine how that wouldn't have worked out, like having a safety room full of guys who aren't good in coverage. Like you knew this about these guys. It's crazy they didn't bring in like a veteran coverage safety. I was saying it all off season, but I digress.
Your best one's coming off ACL too, right? So you're expecting him to be this cover guy, and maybe not even so, but when you have the other options that you do, they were either wrong about Marcus Siegel or just hoping that he was going to be something he's not, because when he was in Kansas State, he was not a cover guy. Like he was never really used as a cover guy. So for them to expect him to do something that he never did in college at the pro level is kind of backward thinking. And obviously Jair Brown's never been a man-to-man guy, and Malik at the ACC level, even he was more of like a run stumper. So I'm sure they're going to have a plan moving forward. Maybe they're going to sign a veteran, but it has been very, very difficult for them to get off the field. And I would say a large part is the safeties.
Yeah, the 49ers defense last 7 weeks has allowed a completion rate of 70.7%. That's 29th in the league in that span. 7.8 yards per pass attempt. That's 25th in that span. And a 5.9 touchdown rate. That's 25th. So that's my worry that, you see this very clear weakness of this team. And, the Panthers seeing the success they had in the second half of that game against the Falcons, maybe saying, maybe we should throw a little bit more. And Bryce Young having a franchise record game with his 448 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 10 yards per pass attempt, which was a career high for him. That would be a recipe for this being a troublesome game, I think, for the 49ers if it goes down that path. Now, we do expect that even if they run, Ted McMillan is going to have a lot of involvement as well. He's logged at least 60 receiving yards in 3 of his last 4 games. And just last week, he had a career high 130 against the Falcons. So against receivers, the 49ers defense the last 7 weeks, allowing 15.6 receptions. That's 31st in the league in that span. 196.6 receiving yards. That's league leading, not something you want to lead in that span, and 1.3 touchdowns per game to receivers in that span, which would rank 26. So it's just kind of like, it just feels like the bottom has fallen off the secondary a little bit, especially with just the injuries that they've dealt with. So I'm hoping that maybe the Panthers just aren't smart enough to take advantage of this from the first quarter. But I know at some point, they're going to be passing the ball with some success here.
Yeah, and you asked, will they ditch the run? Maybe they have more confidence knowing that the 49ers don't have much of a pass rush. Maybe that's what led them to throwing and not so much the being behind last week. So that would make sense, especially knowing, hey, like we are going against a secondary that generally doesn't generate turnovers. I know they did last week a couple of times, but that's not who this team has been. And they also have like the best version of the Bucs offense, like Dave Canales, who's a very good play caller. And the way that he moves Ted McMillan around, like that is what would worry me as well, just because he's never in the same spot. So it's difficult to tee off on him. It's difficult to kind of double him because he is moving around so much. I still think that yards per attempt from Bryce Young is still a little fluky just because like they generate a bunch of big plays, but that's more so scheme. Like they had a screen that they took for a long play last week. That's not really on the quarterback, but I think he misses enough throws where the 49ers will be like fine. And by fine, I mean like serviceable still though. The guy on the screen, Ted McMillan, he's a baller. What Kyle Shanahan said about him is very accurate. Like he does look like that good of a player. He looks like a player who is just well beyond his years. So I would not be surprised if he had another big day because, the 49ers, they allow 70 yards a game against the opponent's number one receiver, and that's kind of where he's been living. So, he's going to be a tough matchup. There's no doubt.
Especially seeing like what the Cardinals got out of Michael Wilson just last week. It's like, man, we got Ted McMillan, who's even better than Wilson. What could we do against that 49ers defense? So I think all is to say, like the 49ers offense is really going to have to come through and score a lot of points. And this could potentially be a high scoring game by the end of it. I guess we'll have to wait and see, but let's take a look at that Panthers defense to just get a better sense of this. So we already talked about a couple players at the top of the show who might be out for this game or just on the wrong side of questionable. We don't know. Christian Roseboom, Trevin Wallace, both of their starting linebackers have not participated in practice thus far. So keep an eye on that one. If those two guys are out, it's obviously going to be a big advantage for the 49ers. For now, we'll maybe just talk about this matchup as if they will maybe be out, like probably, right? So, but aside from that, we got as the corners, J.C. Horn, Corey Thornton, Mike Jackson, and then on the defensive line side, I think Derek Brown is someone who's really good, especially as a run defender on the edge as well. Nick Scorton, their rookie, has kind of been their best pass rusher if I'm being honest. And this is the guy I want to talk about the most, their safety, KP, Trevon Moehrig. And it's because of how they use him, I think, that the 49ers need to be most cautious of. Like, they've lined him up pretty much everywhere, which is pretty impressive. And he's allowed 5.1 yards per target in coverage. That's the fewest from any safety, targeted at least 25 times. Also is allowed a 77.5 passer rating, fifth lowest among safeties, with at least 25 targets. And he's been deployed as a pass rusher 28 times, 10 pressures, and that's tied with Kyle Hamilton for most by any safety. So he's just one of those guys that's going to be prowling. He's going to be kind of everywhere. And so I think that's the one guy you got to pay most attention to who could potentially wreak some havoc for the 49ers.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's been a good player in this league pretty much. I mean, since he touched down, it seems like. I think he's always been productive. He was productive for the Raiders, but nobody knew because he played for the Raiders, and that's carried over to Carolina. Now he's just in probably even a better scheme, right, to kind of highlight what he does well. So he has 14 tackles for loss this year. That is very, very, very good. I would assume that's more than all the 49ers secondary members combined. He does have an interception, but again, like he has a nose for the football. When you do that, and just judging by how Brock Purdy throws, like he's the kind of player who can run into a turnover. So he's a good player to highlight because he's probably one of the only players I would be. Well, no, I think J.C. Horn's actually very good as well, but still, I think Morag is the kind of guy you want to be cautious of because he is that heady. I don't want to say Talanoa Hufanga kind of player, but in the same mold where he always just has a knack for being around the ball.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I highlight him too, because of Brock Purdy's proneness. Is that a word? I don't know. But it is now, and you knew what I was talking about, the proneness of him putting the ball in harm's way. Now, I'm not saying he always turns the ball over. Sometimes it just falls out of defenders' hands, or like it's just barely almost an interception, right? We saw a couple of those even last week in what we deemed a good game from Brock Purdy. But this is what I'm saying, like, if there's a defender who is maybe capable of getting one of those, it would be a player like Morig. So something to look out for Brock in this one. Hope he's paying attention. Hope he's watching this on a Friday afternoon. All right, before we get to the favorable matchups, just a quick reminder, SF Gold Rush Gear has the perfect jewelry to rep your 49ers in style. It's a home game, prime time on Monday night. So maybe you want to get a nice new chain to wear out there. They got big gold chains to sleek red and gold accessories that pop with every touchdown under the bright lights. So whether you're at Levi's tailgating or just flexing your fan pride, this is how you complete the look. And because you're part of the 49K fam here, you get 20% off your purchase when you use the code 49K at checkout. So go shine like the faithful you are. Hit up sfgoldrushgear.com and get your drip ready for game day. All right, let's now talk about the favorable matchups for this game. And it's so funny. Like, I just keep this Christian McCaffrey slide on deck because I think I have him as a favorable pretty much every week. But it just always rings true. He's just the kind of player he is. And there's one specific thing when it comes to this matchup that I'm looking at here, and it's the missed tackles. With Christian McCaffrey, he's forced a league-high 72 missed tackles this season and has gained 300 yards off of missed tackles. That's sixth most in the league. Now, the Panthers defense have missed the 10th highest rate of their tackles this season, 13.2%. They've allowed 585 yards after missed tackles. That's eighth most. So this looks like something that the 49ers at Christian McCaffrey could have some success in. And as we know, the 49ers run blocking has been much better. Christian McCaffrey had his most efficient day on the ground just last week. And so I would kind of expect that some of that carries over into this week as well. And Christian McCaffrey has another good game on his hands.
Yeah, so Carolina, they've been good this season just at defending running backs, actually one of the top 3 teams at defending running backs, but that was with their linebackers in. It's a big difference, as we know what happens when you lose your starting linebacker. So I think that's going to be a huge factor. So we go from a linebackers who were sure tacklers to backups who aren't used to playing. I mean, we've seen the trickle-down effect from our own eyes without Fred Warner. I think it's a really good call out here. Obviously, McCaffrey's going to be heavily involved. That's just what the 49ers do. But getting him matched up against players who aren't used to guarding players like Christian McCaffrey, and then there's the whole revenge angle. He's going to have some extra added motivation. Would not be surprised if McCaffrey shows out on Monday night, just because, again, like when you're a sloppy tackling team with your starters in, it's only going to get worse without your starters.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, the Panthers are certainly not the worst defending the run, but injuries have kind of hurt them a little bit. In the last 4 weeks, they've allowed 5.3 yards per carry to running backs. That ranks 27th in that span. They're allowing a 53.3 success rate on the ground to opponents. That's ranks 29th in that span. So there's some room here for McCaffrey to get going. But I'm glad you also mentioned, it goes beyond just what Christian McCaffrey could do on the ground. Obviously, we know he's a big part of the pass game still, nearly a 25% target rate even last week with Ricky Pearsall back. So I think the injuries is a favorable for the 49ers here. And again, I want to continue to say, we don't know as of Friday, 4:30 p.m. in Mountain Time as I'm recording this, that these players that we're talking about, their two linebackers are going to be out. But we're talking about Roseboom and Wallace. But we're kind of operating right now under the assumption that these guys will be. And if they are, this is obviously going to be big for the 49ers. The Panthers defense have allowed 8.8 yards per attempt on throws between the numbers in the past 2 weeks. And again, that's with just some of the injuries that they've had at one of the linebacker spots. And that's already you get excited about that number if you're thinking about the 49ers. But then you look at who they face, the quarterbacks they face. Penix was 13 of 16, 10.9 yards per attempt. He got hurt, of course, in that game, but that was before he got hurt. And then Tyler Shuck, just a week before with the Saints, 19 of 27, 10.4 yards per attempt, 2 touchdowns. So if you're like, these guys could do this against this Panthers defense, attacking between the numbers, Brock Purdy, Kyle Shanahan with this offense, should be able to eat.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And again, Shanahan wants to live in between the numbers. And when you're seeing these throws, Penix never threw the ball. I think he had one throw over the middle, in between the numbers. So for him to be that successful on more difficult throws outside the numbers kind of tells me Brock, Kittle, Joe, if you read the next gen stats about the 49ers wide receivers, they all run in breaking routes. So I think the 49ers are going to have plenty of opportunities to get some good matchups. And when they have good matchups, they usually win those. So I haven't really watched the Panthers this season and come away thinking, oh man, that defense is legit. That defense is going to hold you down. So I think the 49ers are in a really good spot here. Would not be surprised to see them get north of 30 again.
Yeah, and I'm not going to have specific slides to highlight every player that I think would benefit from this, because I kind of think they all could. But Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle probably most likely to be lined up or covered by the linebackers. So I think I'd probably put those two guys at the top of benefiting the most. But when we're talking about the middle of the field, I mean, it really could be anyone depending on the route. So yeah, it could be big in this game. We'll keep an eye on those injuries for the Panthers in these coming days here. But also, I mean, one thing that's been widely talked about because the 49ers' lack of pressure has been widely talked about. And then finally, we're facing a team that also struggles with pressure. I think this could be a favorable for the 49ers too. The Panthers are generating the third lowest pressure rate in the league, at 28%. And Brock Purdy just last week, he had a time to throw of 3.33 seconds. That's the fourth longest in a game that he's had in his career. And last week on passes over 2.5 seconds time to throw, he completed 15 of 22 passes, 161 yards, and all 3 of his touchdowns. So it seemed to work out for him. So if he gets a little extra time against this Panthers defense, could we expect similar results?
Yeah, I do think so. And he didn't really have to use his legs last week because he didn't need to. I don't think he will again this week just for that reason, right? They're not going to be pressured. He's going to want to just build a rhythm and play on time and play within the structure of the offense as the next month or so go along. So I think it's just going to be a good opportunity for the Jennings, the Kittles, the Bournes, more so the Robinson. I think this is more of a DeMarcus Robinson game where he gets more involved and he gets more downfield throws because I would imagine the Panthers are going to go out of their way to shadow JC Horn, who $100 million corner, like he deserves it. He earns it. He's super talented, but that just means you're going to be shorthanded elsewhere, and the 49ers have enough weapons still, even without Brandon Ayuk, where a guy like DeMarcus Robinson come up and just give you a couple big plays, and maybe Juwan Jennings give you a few plays here and there. So, yeah, I do like the matchup here in a lot of different ways.
The one, I think, not to go back to like cautious because I hate to do that, but like the one thing that I think with the Panthers defense in the past game to be cautious of is that they play zone coverage at the highest rate, and in zone coverage, they've allowed 11 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. So 11 touchdowns is tied for 4th most, but 6 interceptions tied for 8th most. So like there's, kind of what we were talking about, like Brock Purdy's going to be aggressive, and we love that he's aggressive, but sometimes, it could put the ball in harm's way. We might just see that because Brock Purdy so far this season has completed basically 65% of his passes against zone. That would rank 8th lowest among qualified quarterbacks, and just 2 touchdown passes against zone compared to 4 interceptions. So I think that's one thing to maybe just be cautious of in this game, that he'll have more time, but got to watch out for defenders that you may not realize are prowling.
In the same breath, it could be an opportunity if he does hold on to the ball. Like if they do want to go the route of scheming up and hunting explosive, which he's a big play hunter. That's why you pay him. That's one of his best traits. The Panthers are 10th in explosive play rate allowed, so they do give up plays. And when that is the case, right, when you can scheme open and you have backups playing, there will be opportunities for them to capitalize, which is why I mentioned Robinson more so than Jennings and Bourne, who are more underneath guys. So, Purdy sees it well, or he saw it well last week anyway. And it's not like the Panthers have had much resistance against other offenses. Again, Penix just lit them up last week, and that was pre-injury. Obviously, that was only for 1.5, but still, I think we're talking about a much more balanced, much more versatile offense, and it should shape up pretty well for the 49ers.
I'm just going to list off here a couple of other stats that I think work very favorably to the 49ers. Panthers defense is 24th in EPA per play allowed. They rank 30th against motion. The 49ers love to use a lot of motion. They're 25th in blitz rate, 31st in pressure rate. Over the last 6 weeks, Carolina is 29th in pass defense EPA in that span with negative 37.1. And the 49ers are converting a league high 81% of their red zone trips into touchdowns since week 6. Would you imagine that, KP? Like, to start the season and even, dating back to last year, it was just such a struggle in the red zone. I do think, since week 6, but I do think kind of getting the running game going a little bit and George Kittle coming back has definitely helped that some.
Yeah, they got Kittle back, Pooney's healthy, and they're calling more than just zone plays. I think that's the biggest reason. So, like, when you're more balanced on offense in the running game, it allows a lot of other things to open up as well. And now you're not living in 3rd and 7, 3rd and 6. You're living in more manageable down and distances. So, a lot has trended in the right direction. It might not show in the win-loss column because they have teetered back and forth in the win-loss column, but I think there's been a lot of positive signs offensively for this team.
All right, let's get into score predictions. And before we do that, I'm just going to say Carolina's offense is 28th in points per game this season, averaging 18.8. I know they exploded, last week, but
they stall. I'm so glad you said that. For the first half, they look like the worst team in the NFL often. Like, there are a lot of times where against the Cardinals, I remember the first time they came back and beat the Cardinals, or they either won outright or it was like a close game. But for that whole game, they were pretty much down 3 touchdowns. So the second half, they're just playing catch up. That's pretty much every Carolina Panthers game. They're just playing catch up. They pad stats. They get a bunch of yards. Could that be different against the 49ers defense? Maybe, but there's no evidence to suggest that it would.
Yeah, they've been outscored in the first half, 82 to 161, which is 30th in the league.
Sounds right.
But in the second half, they've outscored opponents 122 to 88. But to your point, usually it's like it's too late for them. So it's crazy. I guess like that is something though the 49ers do have to be mindful of, that like, hey, just because we're up this many scores doesn't mean they can't come back on us, which is funny because I think Kyle Shanahan knows that more than anyone and is so cautious of that, like keeping Christian McCaffrey in up 3 scores with 8 minutes left in the fourth.
They came out throwing the ball in the fourth quarter last week. He's terrified, as he should be, right?
As he should be. I mean, he's not wrong. I mean, we hate it a little bit, but
I would rather have that mindset than sitting on the lead and losing a game like Arizona did, because if you just run, punt, or run, punt, you're giving them all kind of opportunities. So I would rather my coach be aggressive in that mind. And are there chances that your players get hurt? Yes, but that's every down on every snap. So you can't live that way.
All right, so my score prediction, KP, is going to be 35-23. And, again, kind of like what I said last week, similar. I'm predicting the 49ers go over 30 again. And I'm predicting that 23 that I'm saying for Carolina is going to be like some garbage time score.
Yeah, no, that's a fair bet. I think we were a little light last week because we
didn't guess 40.
Yeah, right. Like we had the same thought process where 49ers build a lead and then the Cardinals are probably going to score, but not to that capacity. I think it's going to be a lot of the same this week where the 49ers get out to maybe 10, 14-point lead. I think they're going to score 35, and I think the Panthers end up getting like 24. So I do think the Panthers are going to score, but that'll be mostly in the second half. I would not be surprised to see Ted hit a couple big plays, but I have a really difficult time seeing Carolina slow down the 49ers based on everything ever in 2025.
Yeah, so your score prediction just went away from mine. You gave the Panthers an extra point. Now, before we get out of here, I mean, Matt Gay, the 49ers signed him. He was recently, literally earlier this week, released by the Commanders, and now he's on the 49ers. Hopefully he doesn't cost the 49ers a game. Hopefully he doesn't miss any kicks like he did the Commanders, because that's pretty much why they got rid of him. So
yeah, that is the exact reason why. So, okay, you're going against the Panthers. You're going against who you mentioned in the first half, miserable. You're going against the Browns. You're going against the Titans. Let's just say Matt Gay is only on the roster for these next 2 games. In no way should you be in a situation where his kicks have to matter.
Yeah.
That's what I would say about Matt Gay. Like Eddie Pinero's been awesome. Like he's been incredible. He's probably been after the Cowboys guy, slipping my name right now. I think he's been the best kicker after him. So like, it's a big drop. It's inevitably going to be a big drop off. But in these settings, again, in these games, you cannot let it come down to a kicker you just signed. So score touchdowns, Kyle.
Oh,
it's almost like being aggressive is a good thing. Yeah.
And maybe think a little bit longer about going for it on 4th down, even. Like, I don't know. Maybe.
Trust the quarterback you just paid.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in to our Friday preview show. Make sure you guys like this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Make sure you check out Niners Nation for all the great content going on in there. KP puts out some great work, as well as the entire team there. Got a lot of friends out there. Shout out Andrew. Shout out Jay. But make sure you guys hit that notification bell so you know when I go live. We'll be doing a post-game show Monday night, so make sure you guys tune into that. But for now, folks, have a good long weekend. Have a good Sunday without having to worry about watching the 49ers, and peace.